I think the whole Manafort trial is very sad. When you look at what's going on there, I think it's a very sad day for our country. He happens to be a very good person.
I feel very badly for Paul Manafort. One of the reasons I respect Paul Manafort so much is he went through that trial.
Donald Trump praising his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who was convicted of tax and bank fraud in connection with Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference into the 2016 election. Now it appears the twice impeached, disgraced ex-president is ready to welcome Manafort back to his campaign. Washington Post reporting that, quote, the job discussions have largely centered around the 2024 Republican convention in Milwaukee in July and could include Manafort playing a role in fundraising for the presumptive GOP nominee's campaign. According to these people who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private deliberations, while no formal decision has been made, the four people described the hiring as expected and said Trump was determined to bring Manafort back into the fold. The Mueller report found that Manafort was severely compromised by its contacts with Russian assets. The Washington Post adding this, quote, Mueller found that Manafort shared internal Trump campaign polling data with longtime associate who the FBI assessed had ties to Russian intelligence. A bipartisan Senate committee that investigated Russian interference in the 2016 election concluded that Manafort's receptivity to Russian outreach was a grave counterintelligence threat that had made the 2016 campaign susceptible to malign Russian influence. Trump later pardoned Manafort in 2020, shortly before the end of his term. Joining our conversation, former top official at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann is back. We also have Eddie, Alexei, and Mike are still with us. So, Andrew, there's probably no one outside of Robert Mueller himself who was familiar with the investigation than you. What was your first reaction to hearing that he's back?
Well, I thought it might be useful to remind people of exactly who he is. But I also think that if you put this story together with Donald Trump's current words about people who participated in the January 6th insurrection and the assault on Congress trying to overthrow our democracy, that they're hostages and not just criminal defendants, the Paul Manafort piece just becomes just another data point for something that we already know about Donald Trump, and very much running as a sort of outlaw candidate. So this to me seems like a piece of that. But it's worth remembering that Donald Trump is praising somebody who went to trial, as is his right. Paul Manafort was convicted by a jury of his peers of 8 felonies, sort of widespread tax and bank fraud. He then pled guilty to more tax, more bank fraud, obstruction of justice. He admitted that he tampered with 2 witnesses while out on bail. That led to the judge revoking his being out on bail and sending him to jail. He also, as you noted, had ordered that internal polling data be given to his colleague, Konstantin Kilimnik, who was found by the FBI to be closely associated with Russian intelligence. And actually, after the Biden administration took over, it was confirmed and reported that that polling data went to Russia, didn't just go to his associate, that it actually did make its way all the way to the Kremlin. So this is somebody who has a history, a litany of felonies that are quite serious, that usually is not something that is on the resume of somebody who is a campaign manager of one of the 2 major parties in the United States.
So, Eddie, after hearing everything that, Andrew just laid out, and when you look at Trump's continued inability to condemn Putin, even in the wake of the death of opposition Navalny and Russia's highly undemocratic presidential elections, which we've just witnessed over the last 24 hours, What's your assessment of the danger here? How dangerous do you think it is to have someone like Manafort coming back into our politics, back into our political process?
Oh, I think we're at, the highest threat level we could possibly imagine in some ways. And let's add to your description, Mike, what Michael Cohen said in the last hour. Given the bond that he can't make, where is he going to get this money? It actually opens him up to all sorts of influences in so many ways. I think it's so clear to me that the failure to hold Donald Trump accountable over the course of his life has led this man to be able to think that he can act with impunity, that he can act without being held responsible for anything. The idea that Paul Manafort, given what Andrew just laid out, can re-enter politics boggles my mind. And to be honest with you, and I know this may sound a bit, obsessive on my part, damn, white men get breaks, man. I mean, could you imagine?
One more time, Eddie.
There you go.
One more time for the people who didn't hear it, please.
But could you imagine anybody else being able to do this? Whether it's Trump or Manafort or whomever? It just blows my mind, Mike.
I got nothing.
We got to repeat that clip in slow motion.
So, Andrew, just sort of bringing it back a little bit. Back in 2019, NBC reported this former Trump campaign manager, Paul Manafort, told his longtime associate, Rick Gates, after they were hit with the federal charges, not to plead guilty because the president's personal lawyer had assured him they'd be taken care of. According to the special counsel's report, Manafort went on to say that it would be stupid to plead guilty. Manafort emphasized that he had been in touch with the president's personal lawyer and repeated that they should sit tight and will be taken care of, Mueller's report says. Has that prediction come true? Is now we're seeing that borne out, that he's been taken care of, and not once but twice, because there was a little pardon thing, and now back in the game?
Well, remember that Donald Trump's actions and words with respect to Paul Manafort formed one of the 10 bases that were cited in the Mueller report for obstruction of justice that were alleged with respect to Donald Trump. With respect to the activities of Donald Trump with respect to Paul Manafort, but also others, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, all of these people received some form of pardon or commutation from the president. These are people who had committed crimes that were at the behest of or part of or related to their activities with Donald Trump. So, this is not exactly, I think somebody was saying that the campaign used to look like a RICO chart. There's a series of criminals. Michael Cohen himself, has admitted to lying to Congress about the Moscow Tower. And obviously he was doing that for only one person. He wasn't doing that for himself. And the upcoming trial in Manhattan is part of the same thing, where, Michael Cohen, for all of his faults, what he's going to be describing is something that he clearly wasn't doing for himself. This is all undertaken for Donald Trump and is part of a pattern. But it is a case where Donald Trump, because he had the pardon power, was able to give all of these people around him get out of jail free card, literally. That is the state of our country, where we have Donald Trump running for office again, with overtly saying that he is running to let criminals out of jail, and is going to reportedly use criminals to help him get back into the White House.